Is this the ultimate comeback story or not? Because before May, we were in this mindset that like Star Fox was a completely dead IP. It's never going to come back. Nintendo doesn't know what to do with it anymore. They've completely failed. They're not going to ever make it mainstream again. And what happened? Star Fox was in the Super Mario Galaxy movie. People were aching for a new Star Fox game. It gets announced. It's a remake of 64. It looks great. And now we have people like speculating about the future of the franchise. Like just like that, we have seen a complete turnaround on how this franchise was viewed and how it was being treated. Because this has consistently remained one of Nintendo's most beloved franchises. This has always been something that like they've that has always had a lot of potential, but we were told that like this wouldn't do well in the modern market. But as it so happens, it seems like the market is swinging back to good games again, and so games like this are actually finding an audience and actually doing really well. I remember when Adventures and Assault came out, and even back then, those games felt really dated. Okay, Command came out, and everybody hated it. But like here, it feels as if they have a better understanding of how to sell Star Fox to the public by making it more story focused, updating the visuals, keeping it rooted in like 64. Like this is exactly what like mainstream audiences needed to get back into Star Fox. But my point, the thing I wanted to talk about is just how quick this turnaround has been. Because when you really think about it, Star Fox has been the poster child for mistreated Nintendo IP since the 90s. Okay, Star Fox 64 was one of the most beloved games on N64. It's one of the best games of all time, and yet everything they tried since never really recaptured that feeling of like blasting through the Lilat system. Star Fox 64 is like unmatched when it comes to its replay value, when it comes to its quality, when it comes to its quotable lines. And it's not something that like any of the other games ever managed to capture. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Changing industry trends, they just weren't focusing on Star Fox. And there was this big push to reinvent Star Fox to be something a little bit different, something that wasn't tied to a rail shooter, which was falling out of fashion at the time. Like for a long while, we were told that Star Fox needed to like change and in needed to go open world in order to be successful, but that no longer feels true. Like it feels like today's audience is going to be a lot more accepting of the typical Star Fox formula, to the point where I do believe this remake is going to be the highest selling Star Fox game ever and kind of cement Star Fox as the premier rail shooter of the new era, the new reinvention of this genre. This is going to be the genre's big comeback. This is kind of similar to what happened to 2D platformers, right? Because back in the 90s, 2D platformers were like cream of the crop, these beloved action games, everybody loved them. They were iconic. But then like 3D platformers came around and suddenly they looked boring and outdated. And it wasn't until New Super Mario Bros. Came out that people started getting into 2D games again. Like this seems like that kind of situation in which Nintendo has noticed that like there is more of a demand for on-rail shooters again. They have noticed that there is demand for this stuff. And so they come full force back with Star Fox Remake, a game that defies all expectations, that came out of nowhere, that's blowing all these indie copycats out of the water. And they did it by doing the one thing that everyone told them that they should not do. Like, do not make more Star Fox 64. That was, you can actually look at RGT 85, like just before the Star Fox announcement, just before the direct, and he straight up said that is that like I don't want a remake of 64, I don't want a remaster, I don't want like a new game in that style. Like do something new, right? Like that was specifically what he tried to tell us, and that mindset was just very very out of touch and completely wrong. Okay, the reception to Star Fox on Nintendo Switch 2 has been like amazing. Okay. People are like over the moon about this thing. People are hyped. People are excited. People are like, foaming at the mouth. They're like really looking forward to this game. It's looking like this might be the big Nintendo Switch 2 game of the summer. Like, I can't see Splatoon Raiders outperforming this. And they did it by doing the one thing that they weren't supposed to do was remake 64. And to me, I think this just goes to show you just how quickly a Nintendo IP can come back in vogue. Okay, because we had gone through a long string of Donkey Kong releases that didn't do very well. Donkey Kong Country Returns was one of the highest selling games in the franchise, and then we got Tropical Freeze, which didn't do as well, never became as popular. And it wasn't until Bonanza where it felt like the series was 100% being treated like an A-list franchise again. I feel like we're going through like a similar arc with like Star Fox, where this is a series that's been like through the ringer for a lot of reasons, because of Rareware, because of the industry trends, because of like, the people that were in charge of the brand for throughout the 2000s. Like Star Fox is a brand that like struggled through like a variety of different reasons and is like resurfaced. And this is becoming a pattern. Okay, this is the thing that I've noticed, over the years, like seeing Nintendo bring back franchises like Metroid or Punch Out or like, Fire Emblem or like, any of these games that like either never took off or like went through a bit of a hiatus. Like, generally what happens is that they come out of nowhere and like blow everyone's expectations out of the water, right? Because nobody knew Tamagotchi Life was coming out, right? It'd been like 10 years since the last one. Everybody kind of forgot about the IP. I was kind of asking like, where's Tamagotchi? But like nobody else seemed to notice or care. It came out now and it's like one of the best selling games of the year. Like, why? Because they really took their time with it to make a really compelling original title, right? Something that's like very much unlike other life sim games like it, something that has its own personal personality and vibe, something that really sticks out from the competition. Like Tamagotchi Life is just one example of this phenomenon, but like I do think this really needs to be spelled out for people is that a franchise going 10 years without a new release, that is not going to kill the IP. You're talking about franchises that have like 30 years of history at this point. Star Fox in a way never really went anywhere. Star Fox was still very relevant because of all the re-releases, because of all the Star Fox 64 versions that are out there, and people still playing the original games. Star Fox 64 is the go-to N64 game for a lot of people, and it's been this enduring classic because of that. I would argue it's probably the most instantly recognizable game in the entire N64 lineup. I like it way more than Super Smash Bros. Or like Super Mario 64 or Mario Kart 64. Like Star Fox 64 just kind of defies all expectation and kind of established itself as an all-time industry classic. And when you do that, you don't necessarily need to put out an endless amount of sequels. In fact, I think if we didn't get so many sequels throughout the 2000s, right? If we didn't get like Adventures, Assault Command, and such order, like there wouldn't be this illusion that Star Fox was like a struggling IP. Because when you remove those games from the equation, Star Fox's arc looks pretty normal, right? You have this franchise that gets a re-release occasionally, gets a sequel occasionally, and blows the roof off every time it does, right? Like when you really look at Star Fox as a brand, it always does reasonably well. The problem is like the release schedule and just their inability to move past like the series traditional conventions, which were limiting at the time, but have like kind of circled around and become like a huge benefit. Because I can tell you that a lot of kids, a lot of younger people have never played a game like this. And it's going to be like very cool and novel for them to like play the game with Fox McCloud and actually get to see those cool characters from the Super Mario Galaxy movie and like really get to experience firsthand like what this game actually is. I've seen a lot of people already play through Star Fox 64 for the first time just because of that movie. And now we have the remake coming out. And I feel like people are really strongly underestimating like what that means for the brand. Like people are just severely underestimating how much Star Fox is going to blow up because of this remake, because of the smart release timing, because it's a remake, because of like, everything they've done to make this game what it is. It all seems to be coming together perfectly. And once it comes back, once the series like tops the bestsellers charts and establishes itself as a Switch 2 classic, like the series isn't going to go anywhere. I remember after Star Fox Zero came out, there was this mindset in the community that like the IP was over and that it would never come back and that it was dead for good. And like, I never really felt that way. And I think we're going to see firsthand how like a 10-year hiatus between releases it isn't shit, honestly. Like that's honestly like just my opinion on this, looking at this, like we're nearing in on like 10 years of Mario Odyssey coming out, right? No 3D Mario in sight. And does that mean Mario has failed? No. It means people are still playing Odyssey. It means people are playing Super Mario Bros. Wonder. It means people are playing like all these other games that come out. Like Star Fox excels in its niche, and it will become a bigger franchise with this remake. And I feel as if a lot of people aren't prepared for what that actually means. Like, I feel as if people aren't aware of the fact if this series was considered dead until just recently. If a series like this that hadn't gotten like a beloved game since the 90s could make a comeback like this, like who's to say this couldn't happen to like any other dead Nintendo IP? It's only a matter of time until we get a new Punch Out or a new like Star Tropics or like a new Zelda, like anything really, anything you can think of really. Like the simple fact of the matter is Nintendo has demonstrated just how much value they put in their franchises and how you can always, always, always count on them to deliver a sequel someday.